going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and a video that I honestly should have done about 6 months ago. So I never got around to posting what my favorite movies from 2022 were. It's definitely a moot point at this point, considering we're well into 2023 by now. It was something I was meaning to do, but I was super busy. I just didn't get to see every movie by the end of 2022. I was in the middle of catching up at the beginning of this year and was hoping to have something out at least to coincide with the Oscars, because I know some channels were waiting until then for their best of the year lists. But obviously that didn't work out either, and then I just lost track of time, to say the least. I had a lot going on, and I simply haven't had as much time lately to dedicate to longer videos. And this was unfortunately one of the videos that took a hit as a result. So I'm sorry if you've been following me and you were looking to see this. I'm hoping to be more timely with these things moving forward. But I still wanted to do this list, and better late than never, as I always say. So we're going to get right through that. So if you've been looking forward to this list for me, here you go. So as usual for me, I saw a lot of movies in 2022. Or should I say at this point, I saw a lot of movies that were released in 2022, considering I caught up with a few films at the beginning of this year. And as I've done with previous best of the year lists, in order for me to be a little more fair, as I'd be leaving off so many great movies, I'm doing a top 25 of the year. This covers a nice spread between some blockbusters, Oscar films, smaller indie films, and even more hidden gems that I think deserved a little more attention. I'll try to get through everything quick, since we're also already well past talking about 2022 movies at this point, but all I'll say is, I loved all these movies that are mentioned here. Just because something's an honorable mention, or number 20, or number 25, it doesn't mean I thought it was just good or anything. I really enjoyed all these movies. 2022 was a great year for movies, honestly. One of the best in recent memory. So even with everything listed here, this was a hard list to narrow down. But with all that being said, let's kick things off with 5 honorable mentions, and they are in alphabetical order. EO, a profound experience dealing with the beauty of the world and the cruelty of humanity, all through the eyes of a traveling donkey. The Good Boss, a timely pitch-black satire about the corporate world with an incredibly charismatic Javier Bardem, whose character's charm hides a manipulative streak. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, a fast-paced, hilarious adventure that's easily the best entry in the Shrek franchise since Shrek 2. Some Like It Rare, a dark horror comedy about a butcher who goes to extreme lengths to grow his business that's equally as gruesome as it is hilarious. And Weird, the Al Yankovic Story, a parody biopic about the king of parody music that spirals into absolute madness and features a committed performance by a totally game Daniel Radcliffe. All great movies, go check them out. But without wasting any more time, let's get to my top 25 movies of 2022. Coming in at number 25, Barbarian. It was great to get a movie whose popularity was built upon the strong word of mouth with a pitch of, go into this completely blind because it'll totally shock you. And that certainly adds to the experience here, because this spirals completely from the original premise the trailer marketed to us. And what was great was that it's not just a novelty experience. This is a genuinely creepy thrill ride, filled with rich, complex characters and moments of perfectly timed dark comedy that puts Zach Cregger out there as one of the best new directors to be on the lookout for in the future. Number 24, Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. As someone who's never watched anything Beavis and Butthead related prior to this, but is aware of the original show's reputation, this is a great entry point for watching these characters, which updates their signature crude humor for a modern audience. It's one of the silliest movies of 2022, it's the furthest thing from highbrow entertainment, but it's pretty consistently hilarious. Number 23, Bodies, 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 a sharp satire on Gen Z culture that also happens to be an engaging murder mystery, feeling like Scream meets Agatha Christie. All these characters are some of the least people you'd want to find yourself trapped in a house for a weekend with, but as far as watching them all on screen, they're all so much fun to follow, with Rachel Sennett being the big standout for me personally, with her impeccable comedic timing. And the ending is by far one of the best twists in a movie in 2022, and I found it nothing short of brilliant. Number 22, RRR, pretty much everything you could ask for in a modern blockbuster. It's loud, bombastic, over the top, and tackles a wide range of genres, from a musical to a romance drama to a buddy comedy to an action thriller and so much more. It kicks things off cranking things up to an 11 and rarely lets up, making its 3-hour runtime fly by. We need more blockbusters like this. Number 21, The Northman. Robert Eggers brings us his most epic and grandest scale film to date in this Viking action thriller. With this being an adaptation of the story that directly inspired Hamlet, The Lion King, and countless other properties, this might feel a tad familiar to some audiences, but make no mistake, this is still nothing short of riveting, with its stunning cinematography, brutal fight scenes, and larger-than-life performances. Number 20, The Black Phone, a creepy horror thriller that manages to be equally as entertaining, with a storyline about a child escaping a basement that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Scott Derrickson immerses you in this chilling atmosphere with some really solid direction, but the real standout for me is Ethan Hawke as the Grabber, swinging for the fences with his performance, leading him to be one of the most memorable horror villains in recent memory. Number 19, Dinner in America. This is one that didn't get quite a huge release, but it's one you should certainly put on your radar. It's a coming-of-age comedy with a loud, aggressive, in-your-face energy that'll make it feel like a dark punk rock version of your typical quirky indie comedy. It tackles themes about finding connections in the most unusual places, which we've seen before, but with an unconventional pair of lead characters and a frantic but pitch-black sense of humor. It's endlessly entertaining. Number 18, Sweetie, You Won't Believe It. Another one on here that didn't get necessarily the biggest release, but this is one that was a real treat for genre fans, with it feeling like a crossover between The Hangover and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You have sequences of characters bickering or getting into drunken shenanigans that'll be immediately followed by sequences of gory, over-the-top violence, though it's all played for laughs, and the results are nothing short of hilarious, as well as totally unpredictable. It's far from one of the deepest movies of 2022, but it's a hidden gem you don't want to miss. Number 17, The Roundup, a high-speed action thriller with a charismatic Don Lee as our detective protagonist at its center. It's a take on the loose cannon who doesn't play by the rules trope, but it's a take that's played to some very funny, over-the-top results, with our lead essentially being a live-action one-punch man, and surrounding him is everything you want from these sort of movies, including bloody shootouts, on-the-edge-of-your-seat chase scenes, and creative hand-to-hand combat sequences, sometimes all back-to-back-to-back, as events spiral out of control quickly as more people in this criminal underworld get involved. It's a pure dose of adrenaline that's an absolute blast. Number 16, The Fallout. Jenna Ortega had her best year yet in 2022 that catapulted her into the mainstream with X, Scream, and Wednesday. But kicking off the year for her was the best of all these projects, with an emotional drama that deals with the aftermath of a tragedy, which I won't get into, but it's one that's unfortunately an ongoing issue in real life. Both Ortega and Maddie Ziegler are phenomenal here, and what I actually really appreciated is that the film perfectly captures the gravity of this heavy subject matter and shows how much a traumatic situation might stay with someone, but that it also doesn't define them, as our two leads try to overcome the events of the beginning of the film. But it's not doing so in this cheesy, overly simplistic way that feels detached from reality. It feels much more organic and three-dimensional, with us really getting to know these characters. And by doing so, it makes the character drama all the more powerful. Number 15, Nope. Jordan Peele's third feature sees him head into blockbuster territory, evoking the feel of classic Steven Spielberg and M. Night Shyamalan, while still throwing in some of the surrealist imagery and dark humor he's been known for with Get Out and Us. I found this to just be a good old-fashioned great time at the movies. It's just really entertaining on top of being a little unnerving at times. There's a sequence involving a sitcom gone wrong that made for one of the most unsettling moments of the film, while also being absolutely mesmerizing. And the cast was all around phenomenal. Daniel Kaluuya, as usual, is a captivating lead, though Keke Palmer was a huge standout for me, with Steven Yeun also being one of the most unique characters in Peele's film so far. On top of the fact it's just beautifully shot, especially in its riveting final act. It's just another reason to show Peele's one of the best directors in the business right now. Number 14, Official Competition. This one flew a little under the radar, but if you love movies centered around filmmaking as an art form or just the industry in general, you definitely don't want to miss this. It's a satire on things like the process of art house filmmaking, method acting, and usually the more pretentious aspects of the film industry. And if you're not into those sort of prestige movies, this skewers that side of the film world, though it's done in an incredibly accessible way that, if you've been to film school and encountered people who embody the qualities of the film's characters, you'll definitely be in for a treat, but it still also has that broad appeal that everyone else will also be on board. This is probably one of the most unhinged Antonio Banderas performances in some time as this snobby actor, and I thought he was a blast, while Penelope Cruz, as the director, way too dedicated to her craft, was also a lot of fun. Number 13, Triangle of Sadness, one of a few Eat the Rich-centered satires in 2022. This heavily explored class struggles in three very distinct but connected storylines, and I thought it struck a nice balance between some clever bits as well as just being completely absurd. Like, there were times it really had something clever to say, especially in its third act on an island, but then it also would not hold back in moments where it would just be completely silly, like the sequence of people vomiting on the boat, which was even used as a poster for this. I got a lot of laughs out of moments like that, I love movies that tackle this sort of subject matter, and I just had a really good time with this. Number 12, Babylon. Keeping with the themes of movies centered around the film industry, I know a lot of people were divided on this one, primarily for the 3-hour runtime and some of the more graphic, obscene, dark humor. Though, if you couldn't tell, I was on the side that was all in on those things. I thought this was just an absolute blast from start to finish. Between its chaotic energy, its catchy, foot-stomping soundtrack, frantic sense of humor, and a trio of knockout performances from Diego Calva, Margot Robbie, and Brad Pitt, I just loved it all. It wears its influences heavily on its sleeve. It's essentially Singing in the Rain by way of Boogie Nights. There are especially a lot of references to the former, but it still felt very loving in those references and not just like a blatant ripoff, while also beautifully capturing the tragic side of the golden age of Hollywood. Number 11, Turning Red. A lot of people like to say that the Pixar greatness isn't quite there like it once was, and while admittedly, the studio can feel a lot more hit and miss these days, this is one of those shining examples that shows the magic is still there. I know there were some concerns by parents over whether the subject matter, being a metaphor for puberty, is appropriate for kids, and while it's ultimately a parent's decision what they choose to show, I'd say this is still very much accessible for all audiences. There's definitely more jokes aimed at older audiences here than some other Pixar movies. It took a lot of influence from anime and felt even a little Lord and Miller-esque at times with its very fast-paced, off-the-wall style of humor. But it's the clever sort of adult humor where the joke will probably go over kids' heads, so it won't feel totally inappropriate. But even that aside, as I said, there's still plenty for kids to enjoy as well. There's still a moving, very relatable story about family dynamics and generational conflict that I think will go a long way for younger audiences. So there's definitely something for everyone here, and it definitely has that classic Pixar feel that everyone wants to see more of from the studio. It's just a shame this went straight to Disney+. Bringing us into the top 10 is The Batman. Now, I've been kind of over the dark and gritty superhero movie for a bit, but Matt Reeves has given us one of the best versions of those sort of movies. We really don't get to explore the detective side of Batman in movies all too much, so this was a refreshing change of pace, giving us something in the vein of Seven with even a bit of a horror edge to it. Like the sequences of Batman being this more menacing presence that the criminals of Gotham fear, lurking in the shadows, and even gave me a little bit of an unnerving feel, as did Paul Dano's take on the Riddler. And even though it's grim and serious, it didn't just feel overly depressing, it still engaged you on an emotional level. Robert Pattinson was excellent, exploring a Bruce Wayne who clearly doesn't have it all together, and while it has a slower feel to it, when things would ramp up, it was intense, especially thanks to a fantastic score by Michael Giacchino, immersing you completely in the atmosphere to go hand in hand with Reeves' direction. There's a chase sequence with the Penguin especially that had me on the edge of my seat. Number 9, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, one of 3 different Pinocchio movies that we got last year, and this is by far the darkest adaptation, not just of those 3, but in a bit, drawing more influence from the original comic source material, while also tying in historical events as a catalyst for several events here, with this taking place during World War II. Even if you feel you know this story already, this still feels like a refreshing take on the character, especially in its exploration of thematic elements such as finding true meaning in your life that will really resonate on an emotional level. And then 2, the stop motion animation is nothing short of phenomenal. The craft on display was gorgeous, and it's a style of animation I wish was seen more. Number 8, Elvis. Biopics are well known for a very particular formula, story-wise, one which this follows pretty closely as well. So, in terms of just about everything else, it all really needs to stick out in such a unique way in order to make up for it. And this certainly does, with Baz Luhrmann cranking the energy all the way up to an 11 from pretty much the opening scene, and almost never letting down. And what we get here is the most frantic, chaotic, larger-than-life stylish biopics that we've ever got. There's definitely a campy feel to it, with some silly dialogue, over-the-top frantically edited montages, and a cartoonish performance by Tom Hanks. But Austin Butler as Elvis himself was truly something to behold, to the point that if you closed your eyes, it truly sounded like the real thing. And then the sound production was honestly immaculate, with the concert sequences wanting you to just jump out of your seat and dance along to it. It's a movie that mostly relies on its style, but it's a style that works so well that it makes this a truly entertaining experience. Number 7, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, which was released all the way back at the beginning of 2022, and is another movie on here that flew right under the radar. But it's honestly a shining example of how you can do so much with so little, giving us a minimalist version of a time travel movie. But one that still feels creative and inventive with such distinct characters you grow attached to so quickly. The general premise is that a cafe owner who lives upstairs from the cafe realizes the computer in his room is linked to the TV downstairs and is 2 minutes ahead, allowing him to talk to himself 2 minutes into the future. So the way they play around with this concept is just so much fun, with the whole thing shot to look like it's one take. It's one of the most unique takes on time travel I've seen in a long time, and serves as a reminder of why I love movies so much. Number 6, The Menu, another class-centered satire, this time with more of a horror edge. Now, despite that, along with the food theme, this doesn't take the obvious route that you think a movie like this would go. Instead, it adds more of a psychological element, especially in the form of Ralph Fiennes as the villainous head chef, commanding the scene whenever he showed up. While the social commentary here, as opposed to say Triangle of Sadness, doesn't exactly give us anything too new, the amount of clever one-liners and pitch black humor goes a long way here, making for a deliciously wicked good time. Number 5, Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. Rian Johnson and Daniel Craig can crank out 10 more of these movies, and I'd be all for it. If you love Knives Out, this pretty much delivers just about more of the same, which in my book is a huge plus. It's got maybe a slightly goofier and self-aware edge to it. I think Daniel Craig is even campier this time around as Benoit Blanc, but as usual, he was still just wonderful, as was the entire cast. Kate Hudson in particular provided some of the biggest laughs, while Janelle Monáe had just all around the best performance. And then too, as a murder mystery, it once again had me hooked. It takes a lot of twists and turns, though it never felt overly convoluted. The writing was all clever, it's once again very funny, and it's just an all-around good time. Number 4, The Banshees of Inisherin. Martin McDonagh takes a simple, though very relatable story that shows a friendship reaching the end of its course and sends it spiraling out of control. The film builds in intensity through its character drama, with it bordering on thriller territory with the extreme lengths both Brendan Gleeson goes to avoid Colin Farrell, and Farrell's insistence on then trying to salvage this friendship. It mixes in McDonagh's signature pitch black comedy, though also hits us with a lot of existential themes, with characters reflecting on how life is short and how it will be remembered after we're gone, resonating deeply on an emotional level in between all the laughs. While both Gleeson and Farrell are fantastic, Kerry Condon as Farrell's sister is by far the biggest standout for me, with her own arc heavily exploring the themes I just mentioned. It can head into some truly dark territory at times, but it's also equally as profound. Number 3, the Bob's Burgers movie. It's basically just an extended episode of the show, and if you were never a fan of the show, I don't think this will necessarily convert you. And while some people have used that description as some sort of criticism, I think that's the thing that ultimately works to this movie's advantage. I absolutely adore Bob's Burgers, and I love its fast-paced, joke-a-minute style of humor, where little cracks are made even in the most mundane-sounding dialogue. And this very much continues that trend, with almost every little exchange causing me to erupt in laughter. And there was so much attention to detail that, even in the background, there was still some sort of joke going on, down to posters on the wall containing some sort of great pun or advertising something so wild and out of left field. I just thought that every little bit that it threw at us here just hits so well. On top of the fact that there is a mystery element to it that led to a fun story. It's definitely something geared towards fans, and it's not exactly the deepest or most poignant movie out there, but hey, not every animated movie needs to try and be Pixar or something. Our runner-up, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Now, I'd never seen the original shorts this was based on. I did not have any sort of attachment to this character prior to seeing this movie, so I didn't completely know what to expect. But I have to say, I was truly blown away by this. It amazes me how a movie that felt so literally and figuratively small in scale could feel so grand and larger than life. It's yet another classic example of being able to do a lot with just so little, primarily taking place in one setting where our title character lives. But it has such an infectious energy about it, with a heartwarming, uplifting feel as it discusses staying optimistic, even in the toughest of times, but not in that cheesy, generic, inspirational quote sort of way. The way it would handle conflict, especially the struggle of rebounding from a tough situation that hurts you on such an emotional level, it all felt so organic, and the journeys these characters go on felt satisfying, and it might even put things in perspective regarding your own life. It's a truly remarkable experience, on top of being such a funny movie that I left the theater with a huge smile on my face. It truly is a gem. But in first place, it's Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I feel like you can use a few movies from this list as being examples of how there are still plenty of creative, original films out there these days, But this is the perfect example, if you ask me. This is so many different genres all packed in one. It's one part character drama, one part martial arts movie, one part Jackass style comedy, one part sci fi epic, and so much more. It bounces between so many tones and styles that you think there's no way it can all flow together. But you'd be surprised to see how cohesive it all felt. On top of this being a visual treat, with stylish direction and brilliant editing, as well as taking such surreal, bizarre concepts and transforming them into some of the most emotionally profound storytelling. And it's all supported by a wonderful ensemble cast. Michelle Yeoh, Kei Kwan, and Stephanie Hsu are all just top-notch here. This was easily the most inspiring comeback story of all time for Kwan in particular. I remember seeing this and I was just so moved by the end of it. It's a truly remarkable film. It was completely deserving of its Best Picture win. Its ambitious storytelling sticks the landing. It packs a truly emotional punch. It's an enormous feat in filmmaking, and it comes in as my #1 movie of 2022. But let me know, what were your favorite movies of 2022? Was it anything from this list? Was it something I left off? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it. And for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.